All right. Hey, welcome to Render Radio. My name is Cliff Thompson, and that is, who are you, my friend?
Hey, bro. I'm Bodie. It's great to be here tonight, all the way from Manuriwa.
Rewa. Good to have you both. I'm excited to bring on our special guest tonight. He was my boss in a variety of different capacities when I was in corrections, but not only as a boss, as a leader, a mentor, someone that really carried himself in a unique way, in a good way, despite in spite of all he had to carry and some of the pressures you might think someone in his position would carry. So, like I said, it's a real privilege for us to have him on here tonight. A very busy man, so the fact that he's made time for us and for you is really, really cool. So we're going to bring him in now. That's Darius Fagan. So, Darius, welcome to the show. Good having you here.
How's it going? You guys are looking good. Look at the mood lighting you've got going on back there. That's you guys are set up.
Well, it's like salt. It can only enhance what's already there, right? But no, it's great to have you on, Darius. And like I said, I've been very privileged to have you as my boss, my manager, in a variety of different roles, and even getting to know you on a bit more of a personal level and seeing you operate has been really, really call it a blessing and a real good learning for me. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in a moment, but just to kickstart us off, maybe tell us a bit about yourself and then a little bit about the role you've taken on now, or that you've been in now for a while. And then we'll just have a bit of talk and conversation around that, leading into some leadership questions off the back of it.
Yeah, so kia ora, ko Tararua te maunga, ko awa kairangi te awa, no Rongamai ahau, ko Darius toku ingoa. I'm Darius. I'm from Rongamai or Upper Hutt, as it's commonly known. I live near the Tararuas, which kind of tower in the background, and live near the Awa Kairangi, which is the Hutt River, as people know it. And that's where I'm coming to you live from right now. And that's where I was born and raised. And I went on a big circle in life. I went on a big journey to Auckland, to Christchurch, overseas, and then for a whole host of reasons ended up back here after being born and raised here. But most of my whānau are from the South Island. I'm the only North Islander in my whānau, really. My mum and dad were from, my mum was from Tapanui, down in the deep south. And my dad was born in Oamaru, and they grew up, spent a lot of time in Dunedin, met in a place near Dunedin called Tomahawk, moved to the North Island. I came along, and yeah, so I'm pretty much the only North Islander, apart from some of my cousins and stuff that are here from Wellington and Porirua. Hang out. And yeah, like you said, I work for corrections now. I'm general manager for case management and probation. Corrections is a pretty big place. We've got 10,000 people, 10,000 essential people who work for corrections.
Wow.
And a couple of thousand people that work in the community for the probation part of corrections. And there's 10,000 people in our prison that need looking after right now. There's 30,000 people with community sentences of some type or other that either need our help or need us to keep an eye on them. And that's kind of what we do. So whether it rain, hail, or COVID, we're somewhere in your community. So.
Wow. And that's pretty amazing. I want to talk about sort of, because of the scale and the scope of not just corrections, but your role. We'll talk about that in a moment. But what sort of has been, if you could round it up, what's been your journey in corrections? What was the on-ramp? What got you interested and got you going? And what was your first role? And then, because you've had a somewhat rapid rise, when people get to know you, they see why you've risen the way you have because of your skill set, your personality, your character. But what was your on-ramp? How did you get into corrections, and sort of what's progressed you to where you are today?
Yeah, the thing is, I've been working on and off for corrections for almost 20 years now. So it depends how you define rapid. I don't know if that's rapid, but I went to uni in Wellington here, went to Victoria Uni, and I did a criminology degree. And I think like a lot of young people, you do that at the time. You think it's an interesting thing to do, but you don't have a lot of idea of what you're going to do for work. So it happened. I had some friends living in Christchurch, so I went down and hung out with them for a bit. Didn't have much going on. Was working in a supermarket, enjoying that because it paid the bills, and saw these ads in the paper for probation officers. I thought, oh, criminology, maybe I can do that. So I applied for the job. Got a phone call. Hey, sorry, you're not what we're looking for. Sorry about that. But then it came up, there was a bit of training going on, and they needed some people to kind of backfill. And so they kind of hired me as a temp to kind of fill in while they were doing a bit of training for some of the other permanent staff. And that's how I kind of got the foot in the door. And that training then went round other parts of the country. And so the opportunity to work in Auckland came up. I went up to Auckland, worked in Auckland and Manukau for a long time, and learnt the craft of being a probation officer in Mangere and Banirewa and Otara. And that was an interesting experience, like grow up in Wellington, you don't know anything about Manukau and South Auckland or Auckland. People tell you about traffic and all that. And I remember the first week, Auckland people had told me how bad Auckland was. It's traffic, it's dirty, it's terrible, it's crime, and they had that organic rubbish collection going on. And so I was getting the bus to work, and I could just see all this stuff on the road. I was like, man, it's like a war zone up here. And I didn't realize that, in a week or so, all these trucks come around and clean all that stuff up. And they get rid of things up there, That's why I rolled. And started on a few manager jobs up there, and then I went overseas, and a guy I'd been working with as a manager got in touch with me when I was overseas, and he said, look, there's a district manager job come up in Taitukura, up in Whangarei. He said, you should apply for that. You'd be really good at this. It's a good thing. And I wasn't really done with traveling, but I sort of thought, oh, okay, all right. And did the interview in my pajamas on the floor of my apartment and got told I got that job. So I moved from this city in Japan of like 4 million people to Whangarei of 50,000 or whatever.
Yeah, wow.
It was good, and I think I've been lucky, because corrections, there's so many different things you can do there. Because it is a big place, because it's everywhere in the country. If you move around, there's a job there. There's people there's connections you can make, and you end up doing things that you never thought you'd be doing. Like it's such a deep kind of role. There's things from education to programs to treatment to volunteer to community. It's a big place. Yeah,
that's great. And then you've ended up in the role you're in now. And how long have you been at National Office? I know the title you have now is General Manager. We were talking a bit earlier. It's sort of more from when you first went there, and you've obviously taken on a few more things now. But if you could, in a nutshell, describe to us your role today as General Manager, Probation and Case Management, what that covers, and sort of what the responsibilities are of that role.
Yeah, so this role really is kind of a future-focused role, which is about how people do their job. I don't operate all the probation officers and all the staff out there, but I give guidance, advice, and support and instructions on how you do your job as a probation officer or as a case manager. And the role is really thinking about not the job as it's done today, but how the job might be done next month, or in a year, or in 2 years, and you're doing things like looking at what the best practice models are from our country and from other countries, understanding how to implement that here, or planning what laws might need to change, and working through the process of changing some of the laws that apply to how corrections works. So it's really a future-focused role, and one where you're thinking about what tomorrow is going to be like, or next year is going to be like.
That's a nice sort of segue into what we're wanting to talk about now, which is you talk about future planning and thinking about what future practice looks like. But none of us saw coming what sort of happened rapidly in the last few weeks or couple of months, which is this great challenge of COVID-19. And that meant for someone in your role at a higher level of leadership, you had to obviously pivot quite quickly, and not just thinking about your team that you directly lead, but also the influence that team has, the programs of work, the different things that are going on. How did you find that challenge on a leadership level, and how did you manage that? And then maybe we'll talk about on a personal level, if there is a difference, how you found that as well.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, because I think, often we look at crises and you talk about it, no one saw it coming. And I think when you're in leadership and you're looking at the future, you always see something coming. You just don't know what it is. And you know that one day you're going to have to deal with something that's hard. You're going to have to deal with a crisis or an emergency. And in New Zealand, we've had reminders of that over and over again. We've had big things happen here. We've had earthquakes that have affected a lot of people. We have floods that have affected a lot of people. Recently in the far north there, we had droughts that affected a lot of people. And when you sit back and think about it, you're dealing with these situations, maybe not frequently, but you have dealt with things before. Sometimes in a work sense and sometimes in a personal sense. You never know how these things are going to affect you. And I think that's where you draw a lot on. We've never had a situation that's affected the whole country to this degree. And then if you look beyond that, it affects the whole world to this degree. And that's the difference about this. But your preparation for any crisis or emergency starts ages ago. It's kind of like the same thing happens at home. At home, you put smoke alarms in for that one day. You leave the pot on the stove, right, to save your life. You may not need that tomorrow. You may never need that. And it's the same in a work setting. We spend some time thinking about, what are we going to do if the building burns down? What are we going to do if there's another earthquake? How do we keep in touch with staff if communications are disrupted? And as a leader, that's a big part of your role, is preparing people for that situation, so that when it happens, people know a little bit what to do. They know, and they know that you know what to do. And the good thing about that is that I think in our organization, because there's lots of people around that have dealt with all types of emergencies, crisis, there was a lot of experience there. So you shouldn't be trying to deal with this or make big decisions on your own. There should be other people around that can either say, yep, that sounds like the right thing to do, or hey, I've got a different idea.
That's great. And so, I mean, obviously planning, leaning on the experience of others in those ways. And when I think about my experience and having worked with you for some time, one of the things that used to always, or you would leave me with an impression of, is because I didn't know all of it, but I had some idea of what your schedule was like day to day. And I remember one time we would have our morning briefs at National Office, and you'd have your, whether it was tablet or your diary, and we'd see all of your calendar items and all of the different meetings you had to go to and all of that sort of stuff. And yet you carried yourself in such a way where, like, truly was like a duck on water gliding, and maybe it was paddling frantically but beneath the surface. But what are those things for you, Darius, that keep you? Because I've never seen you necessarily blow your top or lose it in a meeting. I've never seen the stress really get to you. And you leaned into some of that conversation there about leading people well and ensuring that you sort of are good for them. But what are those things for you? Why is it that you personally have found yourself to be that way in how you manage a lot of things going at once, but also keeping yourself maybe pragmatic about what you can and can't do? How do you cope with that on a personal level?
Yeah, I think there's a couple aspects to that. Like, when you get into a state where you're angry or frustrated or you're rushing or things like that, you're not going to make good decisions. And I think it's real important in yourself to recognize things that might be making you agitated or making you worry or making you stress, and be able to identify that and have a way to kind of turn that switch off so that you bring yourself back down again. Sure. And there'll be a whole lot of different ways for different people in doing that. And the other thing is, you can't, anytime you're really rattled and there's a lot of eyes on you and a lot of people watching you, they get rattled. And so you can't be like that. And I always think back to, your time as my time as a probation officer. You're dealing with some people in some tough situations, some people that tell you some things or have done some things that really make you feel worry inside, or you really you might feel angry about what they did inside, or you might think, oh, man, that's a completely crazy way of thinking, or something like that. But you can't show that on the outside because you immediately damage the rapport with that person. You can't sort of go, what? That's crazy. You're nuts. Why did you do that? You got to find a different way of dealing with that, and that's a really good skill to have as a and it's not about hiding it. You can talk about this in a calm way. You can say, hey, we're under pressure. It's going to be hard to make all these changes in a short space of time like we did with COVID. Talk about that, but don't panic. And that's, I think, and we've done a lot of leadership training, and a big part of it is about trusting people. So in a crisis like this, you can't give instructions to every single person every minute of the day. You've got to give some high-level direction and then trust that people are going to follow that. There's 1,000 people out there working in the probation service. I can't ring them all and explain to them what to do. I have to know that they're going to follow the direction and trust that. And that makes me feel calm when I see that happening. And that's been a big part of the job and the role as a leader all of the time.
No, that's great. And do you think that's something that you learned, or was it something that, and can it be learned, or do you think it was something that innately was part of your upbringing, part of your personality?
I think through life, I've always been quite an introverted person, so it's not my natural style to talk to people and lead people and things like that. But I've always been a big observer, and so I've always liked to watch what's going on, understand, and try and then reflect on how that situation could have been different. And that's something I've always done a little bit of when I was younger or as a child. I don't know why, but I think that when you get into your real working life, that's something you can practice. If you take that time, it doesn't have to be long. You take that time to reflect and go, oh, what did I observe there? How could I have made that situation different? Then you're going to go a long way to being able to handle all types of situations in the future. It doesn't matter what.
That's great.
And the thing is, even in a crisis, you've always got time. If the building's on fire, you might not have a lot of time, but you've got a time. You can make some decisions about what you do, how you get out. In a crisis like this, we had a couple of days. It was great. It wasn't like wait where it suddenly happens and you've got to be all hands to the pump. So I think being able to understand that there's always a little bit of time to do a little bit of thinking, talk to some people, involve some people. When you've always got that opportunity, you do it.
Oh, that's great. That's really good advice. And so if we just shift tack a little bit, you've been now at home and you've had to somewhat change the way we do everyday work. Some of it won't change because, like you said, your team was already in a space where they worked remotely anyway. But just on a personal level, what are some of the things that you may have intended to do at the start of this 4-week lockdown versus the reality of what has actually happened or has transpired and what you have been able to do, haven't been able to do? How was that lockdown period at home been for you?
Yeah, well, actually, just to touch on that and backtrack a little bit, when we first started understanding how serious this COVID virus situation was, we kind of put together an emergency management team and a response center and had this idea of planning to go down through the different levels. Right. And we spent like a whole weekend doing that. And then we went into work on the Monday. We were starting to implement that. And then at 1 o'clock on the Monday, we got told, hey, we're going to level 4 on Thursday.
Surprise.
You're done, went out the window, and we're like, man, we're going to have to go straight to that level 4. And that meant we had to do a whole lot more work and less time to prepare for that. And I think that was probably the hardest thing to deal with in that, is that big shift in direction. Some people probably were prepared for that, and some people weren't. And I think we'd done some things already, like planning about how our people were going to work, and we were saying, well, let's split our teams in half. Let's have half the people in the building. That lasted one day. We had half the people. The next day we had nothing. And some of it was, came down to excellent planning. A lot of the people in our national office, because we were moving buildings recently, we'd all moved on to mobile devices, like different laptops and things like that. So that at least meant we could work offsite. But we hadn't thought about how we actually connect. We're very used to being in the same place. We would do teleconferences every now and then, but we hadn't thought about, if we have to do that all the time, how do we connect with people? How do we have morning tea together? How do we get together and collaborate over pieces of work? The normal situation was, we'd have most of our people together in one place, and you might dial in one or two people from outside. Everyone is remote, and you have to be finding a way to connect with each other.
That's right. And so now, in your not working time at home, how have you been keeping yourself occupied? What are some of the things you've been finding that you're getting up to in your lockdown living?
Yeah, well, I forgot to mention at the start my whānau here, my bubble whānau, which is my partner Louise, our dog Doris, and our cat Chucky. That's my bubble. And I've been really busy. Like Louise and I were talking about how fast the days have been going. I kind of think of it, it's almost like planning for your retirement, when you don't have work anymore. How are you going to fill your days? And I've had plenty of things to do around the house to focus on. The dog keeps you busy because you've got to take the dog out for walks and things like that. I do community trapping for predator-free New Zealand in my neighbourhood, and so I've kept involved with some of that to get me out and about.
That's so cool.
And I haven't been short of things to do. We probably got to a lot of jobs and things that we might not have otherwise done. But like you said earlier, when you're working at home, you kind of push the limits of your work time quite a bit. But then the good thing is you don't have a commute at the end of that. I like that. Cooking de-stress for me. I still like to finish my work day and cook dinner or something like that, because it's something else to think about and focus on.
Have you, just to keep yourself sane, have you, at the end of your work day, gone and jumped in the car, driven around the block just to drive home?
I live near the railway station here, and the trains are still running, but there's no one on them. You just see these trains going past.
Weird.
It's really, obviously, it's for essential workers. Try and keep the social distancing. They're putting on more carriages than they need to. So they're not just empty trains; they're big empty trains. And a strange thing. But,
it is strange. It is strange.
We enjoy like we kind of fight over who gets to go to the supermarket because it's an outing, and then we got a good emergency trip out because the dog Doris helped me find a wasp nest in the garden by going and walking into it and getting herself stung a few times. And so we had to whip her off to the vet, and it was quite exciting. We were like looking around at like different things that we hadn't seen for a little while.
So to Doris, you were like, "Are you okay? But thank you so much for getting stung, because now we get an outing." Look, we're going to jump to some questions. We're going to fire some questions through because we've got some good ones in here, and we're just going to as they come up. So Shayla Bors asked, "What's the most challenging part of your role?"
Yeah, well, I think the most challenging part of the role is that your job affects a lot of people, and dealing with change. Everyone wants tomorrow to be better than today, but not everyone wants their work or their life to change to achieve that. And achieving change, sometimes not everyone's going to be happy with what you got to do, and you've got to find the balance between making progress and making sure that you don't cause a lot of trauma or upset or confusion for people along the way. And I'm always balancing that, trying to make the pace of change right so that people can accept what's going on, but also that it's stretching people enough that we grow.
That's great. Awesome. Let's bring another one in. What do we got next? Agnes asks, what are your thoughts about flexible working arrangements, for example, 4-day work week opposed to 5 days?
Well, actually, this is one of the things that's kind of helped us quite a lot in this situation, is that we were already doing quite a lot of work on flexible working, like a lot of people were. And I think, having flexibility is really important because it helps people. We all talk about work-life balance, and it helps people achieve that. So, like I was saying, if you cut your commute out of your day, that can sometimes make a big difference to that particular day. And I was already working at home maybe 1 or 2 days a month, not a lot, but 2 days made a big difference for me. And it usually was convenient for me to do that. And I think we know now, with people being busy, both parents working, trying to raise families, care for children, care for animals, it helps people a lot in their life to work from home sometimes or have a different work week. And we should accept that. And our world's gone to a 7-day-a-week world. We're not a 5-day-a-week world anymore. So we shouldn't try and squeeze everything into the 5 days. I think if some people want to work 4 days, work 4 days. Some people want to work 5 days, work 5 days. If you want to do a split fortnight, do a split fortnight. There's lots of different ways you can tackle that.
1 day. I know from personal experience that these aren't just things you're saying, because I was a beneficiary of you being a great advocate with me, allowing me with my big family to work quite flexibly as well. So I can vouch for Darius on that one. He really does practice what he preaches there.
But we talk about work balance and sometimes forget about the work part. That and we need to feel fulfilled and get satisfaction out of our lives that we've achieved something. So it's not like we put the life balance first and forget about work. It's about trying to keep that equilibrium.
Yeah, it's great. We've got one from Janet here. What strategies do you use as a leader during difficult conversations with people?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think you've always got to be honest. And I think you shouldn't get to a point where you've bottled up a lot of difficult stuff and you unload it on someone all at once. If you need feedback or direction along the way, do that along the way. And then those difficult conversations don't get so difficult. You're in any job and any career and life, people let you down from time to time. It's okay to say that. You don't need to get angry about that. Be respectful and say, how are we going to deal with this differently next time?
That's great. Cool.
Awesome.
Darius, have you watched Tiger King?
Yeah. The amazing thing about Tiger King is I was following a podcast series called Over My Dead Body, and they did a podcast series on Tiger King before the Netflix series. And so I listened to that podcast and I was like, oh, wow, that was unbelievable. And I was telling Louise all about it and how crazy the story was about, the Tiger King and everything like that, Joe Exotic. And then the Netflix series came on. I was really excited to see it. It was like we got into it straight away when it came out. But if you watched the Netflix series and you want more, because there's no more episodes, find that podcast and it'll give you a few more things that you don't get out of the TV series.
Right, and that was Over My Dead Body, is that right? That was called that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if you just search any podcast platform, and it's Tiger King or Tiger King podcast, you'll find that one. I think it was in 4 parts. It was really good.
Cool.
Carol Baskin.
Carol Baskin. Yeah.
We're going to pull in a couple more, and then we're going to carry on with our conversations around some other fun stuff. But let's go for Agnes. What is your advice to help teams communicate better and break silos?
Good question.
This is something that's been a big challenge at corrections, because corrections is like a whole lot of different moving parts. So we have the prison part of corrections, we have the community part of corrections, we have policy, and I think my advice would be mix those groups up as much as possible. And at corrections now, we do that from day one. So when, this may sound really obvious to people out there, but when people start at corrections now, they all start on the same day, whether you're a corrections officer, whether you're a probation officer, whether you're a case manager, whether you're a nurse, you start at the same day, all as a group. And a lot of our leaders, like myself, our chief executive, get to go and talk to those people. And we're sending a really strong message from day one. Hey, you guys all need to work together. Even though you do different things, you all need to work together. And I think that's the same in a smaller team as well. You know, I like to get my teams together often, you know, a lot. Sometimes people complain, you know, that you get together too much. But I've had some great leaders in the past that would get together every week. And if you make a habit of that, in a time like this where you really need to stay in touch, you've already made that space. You've already got times where you touch base and connect with each other. To figure out how to do it in a different way.
Yeah, it's really good. That's really awesome. And let's bring in, we've got some, honestly, we've got some really good ones here. But I want to keep us progressing forward. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull one more in, and then I'm going to collate all of these. Our admin will collate all of these great questions, and I'll try and spend a bit of time asking you a few of them a bit later, Darius, if you don't mind, because I know it's been really helpful for people. But let's fire one more question in here. Seen a few good ones.
Yes, Darius, snack question.
What has been your go-to lockdown snack?
You know, I actually brought a prop for this. I got the
Vegemite shapes. Nice.
And this is a new flavor. And Louisa's mum introduced us to these because she brought them. She came out here from Scotland this year, and she brought them from Australia before they were out in New Zealand. I was like, oh, these are amazing. And then they came on the shelf here, and oh man, that was the last box. Louise ate 4. I think I ate the rest.
Darius sponsored by Shapes.
Yeah, hey, we could get you a sponsorship. Darius sponsored by Vegemite Shapes. There you go.
Send them my way.
We're going to get to closing off the show now. But this last section here, second to last section, is called Our Thoughts Are Gathering. And just one, if you've got, whether it's for leaders or people that, you know, they just need a bit of encouragement or a bit of advice around how to manage some things during this time, what would be your one piece of advice, Darius, or bit of encouragement for people that you could leave them with tonight?
Yeah, I don't know. I've been thinking about how, you know, while a lot of people are making sacrifices, and this is hard right now, it's also a bit of an opportunity to refresh. So we're gonna go out in the outside world again at some point in the future, and we're going to look at things a bit differently. And I don't want us to forget all the things we've thought about now, and all of those extra efforts that we had to go to make connections with people. Maybe don't take all those physical connections for granted as much when we're back out there.
So true. Very cool. And for yourself, Bodes, what's one thing that's on top for you?
I think just in the same sentiment as before, just on the back of Easter and Anzac Day, and then today was Thankful Friday for us, and I threw up a post. So I'm in my feels at the moment, but just I think being thankful for, you know, for everything that you do have, and having that attitude of gratitude. And just having a look at other people that maybe koha in the past, and being grateful for them, be grateful for, I want to say for everything, but, you know, just changing that shifting your mindset, and thinking outwards, and being thankful for others.
Nice. And look, I echo both sentiments tonight, and I think as we close up, I've got a video that I want us to play as we leave tonight's show, and it is about being thankful and about being grateful and about coming hot into Easter, but off the back, into Anzac and off the back of Easter. It's all about remembering those that have gone before us and those that have paved the way. I think about leaders. I think about our parents. I think about grandparents and all of those that have gone before, and being thankful for that, like you said, Bodhi, for people, being thankful for our work colleagues, being thankful for one another, being thankful that we do have jobs for those that do have jobs, being thankful that we can be part of communities, and that if there are people out there struggling, let us know, even if it's through anything that you might need. We have pathways and some great community organizations we're tapped into to help with that as well. So just don't do it on your own. Before we get to that video, Darius, I want to say thank you so much for your time tonight. I know you are a busy person, but also just the wisdom, the leadership, the insight you've shown us tonight, and the ability to have a laugh with us. I really appreciate that as well. It's always good to see you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your heart. And on a personal note, I always say it, but thank you for the way you have looked after me and my whānau over the years. And that's not just my children, but also the honor and respect you have for my parents, which has meant a lot for me as well.